now, due to serve in cabinet in one of the next upcoming meetings of cabinet.
So
we're closer to having a finalized AI, policy.
It was noted that this was in July. Around the submissions, you received over 19,000, right? If I'm not mistaken. Like in terms of from public as a result of public consultation. Have you guys sifted through all of those?
We're almost done with sifting through all of those.
We'll see how
I can hear the skepticism in your place, and it's not misplaced. Money has to be poured where there's strategy, right? Pouring money where there isn't strategy risks the same, results that we have incurred.
Hello, welcome to another episode of ITWeb TV. My name is Simniku Mzekandaba. Today in studio, I'm joined by a special guest. I am joined by the Minister in the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, Minister Solly Malatsi. The Minister's Department is charged with shaping South Africa's ICT landscape through policy development and leading the country in terms of digital transformation for digital inclusion. So the Minister is here to chat to us about being in the role for just over a year now, and just to chat to us more about what's happening, all the entities that are under his portfolio, etc. Minister, welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I'm glad we could eventually get to do it. So looking forward to the conversation.
Same. Thanks, Minister. As I said, Minister, as we started last year, July, you were appointed to be the minister for a department that's had a leadership churn. A department that oversees more than 10 SOEs. And I think at the start of around July last year, you had mentioned that the department has about an 18% vacancy rate, but just some of the issues that you mentioned. But just from you to hear, how's the past year and a half been being in this role and being in charge of a department that has such a high mandate in terms of leading South Africa's ICT development?
Look, it's been a really challenging journey, exciting at the same time, because, as you correctly say, the department has a huge mandate from, broadcasting, postal services, digital inclusion, as you said, and we've got 11 entities. Right, which means that they all have their own boards. They each have their governance challenges at different scales. Performance differs. So what we got into was also, as you said, a department that, given the history of high turnover of executive authority leadership, a sense of, inconsistent policy execution and policy direction, which is the general sentiment you'd hear when you speak to the sector, because, of course, different ministers, come with different priorities. And that has also impacted based on the relationship also in terms of the stability in the boards, because, due to governance challenges, there's had to be interventions that, some of my predecessors had, which some of them continue to fester now in terms of the boards. But I think, where I am now is a sense of realization that the work of, a policy shift, for instance, it's not an overnight mission. It's one that requires collaboration along the journey, and it's an arduous process because our sector is constantly evolving, and our ICT policies, and in fact, even the Electronic Communications Bill Act, which is the foundation of policies in our sector, was done almost 3 decades ago.
Yeah.
Right. And what it was responding to then and trying to shape has evolved so quickly. And it's a matter of now identifying the most pragmatic opportunities in terms of making sure that from a digital inclusion perspective, we try and leapfrog and get people connected, moving towards making sure that the cost to communicate, particularly in terms of the pricing of data, the pricing of smart devices, and the ease of connectivity for every South African, regardless of whether you are based here in Rivonia or where I come from, which is a rural area where large portions of it remain, without stable, reliable connectivity, and to make that a common feature of every South African, so of course, when you then start reviewing the performance of SA Connect, which was a very noble intervention by the South African government, I will recognize that. But then you look in terms of the scale of performance, and you realize that there's been an unfulfilled promise of a noble idea, simply because the project management the project management element of it hasn't been as efficiently as it should be. And it's one of the things that we are looking at currently across our different entities, USASA, Centec, and BBI, who are all, responsible in executing the SA Connect to make sure that we don't find ourselves in the situation that we currently find ourselves, wherein, there's unspent money, yet there are communities that are not connected. It is an assault on humanity to have communities without broadband connectivity, yet monies allocated to that aren't being or haven't been spent as they should be, due to a series of issues relating to accounting compliance.
So, Minister, just to follow up on what you're saying, how much money hasn't been spent? Like, if SA Connect was touted as the project to connect the communities that you mentioned, like far-flung communities, rural areas, and if there is money, why isn't it being spent, and how much of that is there?
Look, I mean, for the financial year, that money which we are currently in conversation, the department is currently in conversation with Treasury to see whether that money could be rolled over. It's in hundreds of millions. Which the entities, in terms of making sure that there is accounting to showcase that for services that were rendered in connecting communities, those were paid for, and the entities, in their engagement, were saying to the department and us that, look, services were rendered, but because of accounting purposes and the collection of invoices and back and forth, transferred to service providers hadn't actually, taken place as yet. But Treasury has a particular framework it uses in terms of looking at how money is spent. It allocates you this portion of money by the financial year, and if at the end of the financial year that money is still in your pockets and it hasn't been spent, it's considered that as money is unspent.
So you still think that SA Connect is the project that actually can achieve this goal of connectivity, digital inclusion for...
Look, I definitely believe so. So the essence of it is connecting public facilities, right? Connecting rural communities, connecting, traditional authorities. And we know, like, as people who come from these environments, that those are the hub areas for such communities. So the intention of the project, no doubt, because we gotta expand broadband connectivity to every corner of the country. Yes, the times that we live in means that you also have to think about all other solutions, which is why the conversation about low Earth orbits will also enter into the fray, because you can't have a singular approach to expanding broadband connectivity when every piece of evidence elsewhere in the world shows that to get to optimum broadband connectivity, you gotta look at the bouquet of interventions that are available at your disposal.
Okay. Minister, going back to your SOEs, you said there's 11 under the department's oversight, or that's charged with overseeing. do you think my question is about whether, do you think it's fair that the department has oversight over all these,
entities.
so many entities? 11 is a lot, and they all have the challenges, as you stated mentioned earlier. So what do you think there's scope to maybe shift some out, or is it now we are set here? This is what this department is charged with.
Look,
making sure.
In all honesty, I think there are far too many entities for the department, particularly for its mandate. And also remember that some of these have ended up in here as a result of the combination or merger of the two departments, or previously, telecommunications and postal services and this one. And I think the reality is you need overall a leaner state. You need fewer state entities, and we have to answer the fundamental question. It's something that I'm interfacing a lot with, is to say that some of them in their current disposition isn't their mandate interrelated to actually be grouped together, and merge into one, so that there's a focused approach. And also, in terms of governance structures, that there's an elimination of these too many structures. You'll recall that there was conversation about merging BBI with Centec at one stage, and also looking at other entities. I'm a firm believer in saying that let's rationalize the entities, and there is work that we've already moved in terms of trying to get to the most practical way to actually proceed with how the future of BBI and Centec is going to be, because one of the issues was based on BBI's current financial positioning. Would a merger, be the right pathway, or it has to be acquisition? So it's a matter of fine-tuning what would be the most elegant way of realizing that goal.
So the fine-tuning hasn't been it's still being fine. It's in the
fine-tuning is a process. It's a process of saying that in accounting terms, in acquisition terms, and because also you have to take into consideration that both of them are established in different ways, right? And in doing the merger, also you have to make sure that the financial situation of both entities are not going to be jeopardized by one or the other.
So it's still on the department's mandate, still on the table.
Absolutely.
And so what we know, things in government don't work. They move at a snail's pace. What are we looking at in terms of time frames or timelines?
Look, I'm always one to be practical, because you also learn things you don't like about government, which is slow pace, because of various processes that are interfaced. But I think it's something that for this term is a priority. And it would be great to realize that before the end of this term. If we can do it faster, that would be even greater. But I'm not going to come here and then say it's next month, knowing that that's not practical.
Yeah. And how is that, Minister, for you, coming into being a minister under the Government of National Unity, you coming from the Democratic Alliance, and you've got a deputy from the ANC. How are you guys finding synergies within the department?
Synergies. Synergy emerges from a consistent effort on both parts. I think both of us, we are senior leaders from our respective organizations, and we understand what brought the Government of National Unity into play. And it's about constantly trying to say what is in the best interest of, this department succeeding and this government succeeding, and also what is in the best interest of making sure that, each of us has their space to do their work. That the minister sets the policy agenda of the department as the law dictates, and that there is constant collaboration in trying to achieve our success into it. If you start looking at lens through everyone's political lens, you're going to fragment your approach. And does that mean there'll always be agreement on each and every step of the way? No. But ultimately, the minister is the executive authority.
Where are those, bickerances coming up from?
Look, also, let's not dramatize this.
Yeah.
In any situation where there is a team, it would be naive to expect that every time you want to do something, then there's agreement from conceptualization up to execution. Humans by their very nature are bound to have different views together and be supportive. For me, what matters the most is when we get to the final decision, and there's a respect that final decision is placed in the executive authority, the one with the constitutional responsibility to lead the department, and we focus on the job. Because I think if we then start trying to nitpick, where did you not agree? When did you agree? That is not useful to the responsibility that we have. We are not in a stokvel.
What does that mean?
I mean, a stokvel means that, you must focus on each and everybody's moods all the time, instead of focusing on the issues and how you get to the issues. I think the media has an appetite saying, how's the temperature of the tension? What does it mean? It's a distraction, right? It's not a distraction for the media because, of course, you got to report on everything. But I'm saying that it's a distraction for the leaders to focus on that, right? Because you don't always have to agree. Even people from the same organization don't always agree, right? What is important is there is professional respect to the roles, the different roles that we have and the different powers that are assigned to each, and that you constantly keep trying to work together. Nobody has a formula in terms of how to manage the relationship between two politicians who come from two different political parties in working together. Is a trial and error process.
Which you guys are probably working through as well, I suppose.
The most important thing is that we are conjoined by the responsibility that we have, and we both have a desire to make sure that the department succeeds, and we've got professional respect for our roles. That is the most important thing.
And Minister, if we go back again to the entities and the department, we've got the South African Post Office. The branch network has shrunk considerably over the last couple of years. So has the staff complement. What is the department's plan around the post office? When you look at it, is there space for the post office in the current environment that we're in? How everything is moving, how technology is advancing, how things have just changed over the past couple of years. What is its role? What have you identified as the post office's role?
So our immediate focus is on, getting the post office out of business rescue. That's the most, pressing immediate responsibility, right? And appointing a board for the post office. We've initiated that process. You'll recall that we went and advertised. We now have a selection committee that would review the applications, do the interviews, and ultimately do the recommendation for my consideration and cabinet's consideration. Yes, there is space for the post office in this period that we live in. However, there has to be a recognition that in order for the post office to be relevant in that space, there are major adjustments in approach, in strategy, and even in policy that need to be executed. Right? The space, for instance, the courier space has been dominated by new entrants and private players who are showcasing to everybody else that there is commercial sustainability in this space. It's about innovation. It's about the technology, and adopting the technological infrastructure that then allows you to provide a reliable service. What had the post office over a period of time was the unreliability of the service. And once consumers shift, it's an impossible mission to get them back if you don't showcase trust, you don't showcase your ability to deliver. So it's going to require, and this is something that we have kickstarted, going into private partnerships with players that are in the space, to try and achieve two things, right? To maximize operational efficiency by leveraging the post office infrastructure. I know you said it has shrunk on the basis of the closure of a lot of branches. However, the depth of its infrastructure is still its biggest strength, to be frank, in terms of proximity to local communities, particularly rural township communities, where many poor people, their first interface with postal and courier services would be a post office facility. So that provides an advantage in terms of the depth of its infrastructure that is in there. I think the most important thing, and I think it goes towards government entirely, is that attitude towards private partnerships have to change, because it's about leveraging each other's strength. And this is why, at the very outset, I said one of the key things, we gotta focus on building partnerships, private partnerships, and some of them are, in the pipelines. There've been discussions with several key players about, setting out partnerships that will also be beneficial to the post office. But the reality is that the immediate challenge of the post office is about capital injection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And government has said that they're not going to be it didn't receive money in the finance minister's last budget. So where do you get that capital from?
So it's also important to frame it correctly, because the money you are referring to is what is linked to the business rescue thing, because through the allocations to the department, the post office has been getting money. There's a environment which we pushed of over 150 million that the post office received. And you would recall a couple of months ago, the funding that we got through the Department of Labor in terms of the temporary employee relief scheme, that was enabled to come and assist, particularly with covering the costs of salaries for the staff.
But Minister, okay, going back to then, you said that the viable option being private partnerships and with players in that space. Has the post office identified private sector partners that it could potentially link up with?
What we have done as the department is there's been unsolicited approaches, and of companies that have approached either myself, the department, and one stage the post office. And what I've directed the Director General to do through the task team that I formed is to say, look at this task team, look at all of these proposals, let's assess how impactful they can be in dealing with the immediate situation in the post office from an operational efficiency perspective, and let's see what is feasible in the meantime. But here is the thing. If we want to guarantee the future of the post office, it can't continue like it operated 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
But it also needs money for the modernization.
It needs money for the modernization. And in order to attract money for the modernization, it's got to be a vision about how to transform and reposition it in these digitized postal and courier services. And that's the responsibility that the post office has, and that is the steer that as the department we've given to the post office.
Okay, so we have to wait and see how that unfolds.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I think there's what you are looking for is an immediate result. To say, are you putting 100 million in there? And I've just outlined to you what the limitations of the fiscus are in putting in money in there. Even for budgetary our purposes, you have to showcase to Treasury that we will use money for these specifics, and outline a vision towards those. And we're saying, as the department, we have identified that there are areas, particularly in the courier space, there is ample opportunity, and also even in the infrastructure space, where with different players, there is opportunity to leverage on the post office infrastructure, because on its own currently it can maintain all of that infrastructure, and sustain it or use it optimally.
Okay. No, we'll see how this one. We'll see how
I can hear the skepticism in your place, and it's not misplaced. Money has to be poured where there's strategy, right? Pouring money where there isn't strategy risks the same, results that we have incurred. And the strategy that we are influencing the post office towards, it's one of saying, relook how you can leverage your current infrastructure to, partner with private players in the courier space. Look at your facilities, for instance, that could potentially be storage hubs, right, for these players in the space, to help offset some of your major expenses in terms of retaining this, and also to avoid the instances where these large facilities that you have are underutilized.
Okay, Minister. If we go to just, Minister, the departments, some of the projects that and announcements that have come out from the department, has been quite a lot. And I'll go to the one that's a hot topic of
Hot topic.
hot discussion. Yeah, it's the top of the list of discussion in the industry, and that's the equity equivalent investment programs. And the last, I think it was noted that this was in July, around the submissions. You received over 19,000, right? If I'm not mistaken. Like in terms of from public, as a result of public consultation. Have you guys sifted through all of those?
We're almost done with sifting through all of those. The team that's been working in reviewing all of the submissions and doing an analysis of them, and the approach there has been simply, you have to give each and every submission the due respect it deserves by going through it, and then doing the analysis that will inform the final policy. And we'll finalize this in the upcoming weeks, so that we finalize that policy directive for ICASA's final adjudication.
When are we looking? I like timelines.
No, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying, in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
In the next few weeks, we'll be done. And as I said to you, and as we have done each and every step of the way, once we are done with the analysis of the submissions, and we do the communication to ICASA, we'll communicate publicly, because we've always communicated transparently on the issue from the moment we issued the policy, the intention of the policy directive, to when we eventually gazetted it, to when we opened for public comments, and even confirmed the number of public comments that we've had. Nothing is going to be done in a clandestine manner.
And are there maybe further engagements before you put out that you're planning to have around, the directive, before you put it out? Are you going to be doing anything more in that regard?
The outstanding step regarding the policy directive is finalization of that analysis of the 19,000 submission, and then the final communication to ICASA, based on my review of the submissions and what I think should happen to the status of the policy directive as it is, and then the ball is in ICASA's court.
Okay. And Minister, we know that the EIPs, there's a lot of around discussion about Starlink in that regard. Has Starlink directly communicated or, engaged the department directly?
Starlink has engaged ICASA, and I think ICASA has communicated, on that, in terms of, trying to establish, the landscape in South Africa, not the department directly.
Okay.
Because any potential licensee would engage with the regulator, not the department.
Now, I remember there was a discussion around how that they also might have engaged the DTIC. So I was just asking in that regard.
but we're not DTIC.
I know, so that's why I'm asking. Did they come to you guys as well? Okay. Minister, if we shift to a project that I, as a journalist, have been covering for some time, which is digital migration. And 2015, June 2015, missed the deadline, the ITU's deadline for all countries to migrate. South Africa is still in the process. What's happening?
Yeah.
How many households actually, still need to receive the subsidized set-top boxes for them to actually be able to migrate?
Yeah, so I'll finish with the second question. You'll recall that one of the things that I was intent on doing when I came into office was the realization that based on the number of installations that still ought to happen, that proceeding with the 31st of December 2024 deadline would be impractical. And I engaged, with cabinet on that and lobbied for an extension. We'd have wanted a longer extension, but ultimately got the extension up to March.
Yeah.
That was, challenged. That happened, but then, challenged in court, and the government lost that case in court, right? At the end of last year, when we lobbied for the extension, there were 440,000 households that were due to still be connected, with installations provided with set-top boxes. And through an effort to try and accelerate that project, and those installations, I think as of this Monday, because I then initiated a weekly meeting on digital migration, just to make sure that all of the players in the department and our entities, that we prioritize execution in this, and we try and move with speed in terms of the installations. I think we've been able to, and I'll after this I will verify the actual number, but I think we've actually done just over 200,000 installations since December last year, which is still not close to the 440,000 household that we should have connected, and at the same time, registrations for indigent households or indigent individuals are still ongoing, and the reality of the situation is that from adoption of technology perspective, South Africa is way behind, as you correctly said out. So we need this. But the history of this issue, the protracted nature of South Africa's journey towards analog switch off, has been, has taken shape in a manner that is disrupted that journey.
Yeah.
Right. And contributed to this delay. And I think, government, there are things that government could have done better, in the past. And we're trying to do it better now, and be more engaging with all the role players, and try and find a common position. And that is the hard part, to find the common position, given one, obviously, the concern around the broadcasters is making sure that no one is left behind. Yeah. And government equally has no desire to leave behind, South Africans and exclude them from broadcasting and enjoying broadcasting services. But there's also the hard truth about, the heavy cost of it to the state, given the limited resources that we have to maintain dual illumination. So it's about trying to find that balance, and engaging with the players. And I know that, post the court case, there's been a concern around the department moving slowly to engage with the broadcasters about a resolution of this matter outside of court. And the disappointing thing about that is I personally gave, the legal representatives who were assisting us on this case a direct instruction to engage with their counterparts and to say, let's start looking at a framework for a non-litigious settlement on the issue. And we operated all along with the knowledge and the impression that that was being done. And it turned out when the broadcasters and the other parties wrote to me expressing their displeasure that, the department expressed in Parliament that negotiations for a non-litigious settlement were underway when the interactions had been informal. And as a result, obviously that put us on a back foot in terms of the relationship with those parties. Subsequent to that, I mean, our legal representatives, we've had to, I think that's where the disappointment comes in there, and we are committed, and I'm personally committed to saying that let us find ways to avoid a lengthy litigious process that is going to cost us all a couple of millions that could rather be invested in other worthwhile things. But let's try and find a common value in the interest of the future of broadcasting for the country.
And Minister, your predecessors have come and gone in the department. The project still hasn't been finalized or finished. Digital migration, that is. Do you think we'll get to that digital migration final line by the end of your term?
I want to. I would really want to have that as one of the things that we've been able to resolve, because it's been festering for so long.
Yeah.
It's something that, quite frankly, I think with the right approach from all the parties in terms of an honest engagement, we should be able to do it. It's one of the things that I want to resolve before the end of my term, no doubt about it.
Okay. Well, let's see how it goes. Let's hope it will materialize, Minister.
Look, I think for the future of broadcasting, it's not even about me having it under my accolades or anything. I think, if you, as you said, if you look in terms of, the ITU's deadline, if you look and when you engage with the broadcasters, you also get a sense there's an appreciation that we gotta get over this project. The key thing is, how do we get it in the most acceptable way for all the parties? And the fact that government lost a court case has put us in a back foot.
And Minister, if we shift to on policy around AI, we know that the department put out the National AI Policy Framework for comments last year.
Yes.
So South Africa still doesn't have a finalized policy in regards to AI. What's been the holdup?
It's not the holdup. I think, it's one of the beauties and the burdens of our democracy is the multiple layers of compliance and consultations, and those often unnecessarily delay finalization, right? Because the framework has to go out for comment, you get, and depending on the number of comments that you get, integrate them back, you take it through the cluster process of cabinet and, even the official departmental channels, and then eventually it goes to cabinet. Then you can then processes, in Parliament, even as a bill. But you'll be glad to know that in terms of the incorporation or review of those comments, that process is done, and it is now, due to serve in cabinet in one of the next upcoming meetings of cabinet. So we're closer to having a finalized AI, policy.
And it because we know how technology advances, it speak to, is it going to be within, what is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important. You always have to start with the framework,
Yeah.
right? And then let society and all the key players make contributions to that. And once we finalize that framework is approved by cabinet, then it means that we can then start engaging with the experts in the field about fine-tuning the policy. But yes, we rapidly need to have an AI policy as a country, and I'm going to make sure that we definitely have one.
Okay. I'll hold you to that, Mr.
Absolutely. Okay.
Okay. So you mentioned at, connecting citizens and the value of devices. And I know that there's government no luxury taxes on low-end smartphones. What does that look like in real life in the current framework that we're in?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I'm most proud of is the success we've had in lobbying National Treasury to relook the issue of luxury taxes on entry-level smartphones, particularly those beneath 2,500 rand, and the removal of that luxury tax. That is the first step. The bigger step is about having an honest conversation about whether in this day and age a smart device is a luxury or a basic instrument of communication in the digital era that we live in. And we're very, very encouraged by the fact that there was a recognition that with entry level smart devices, that luxury tax can be removed. I think the next step is going to be gradually removing them per category. I think there's also a recognition also that there are certain devices, I mean, that it may be necessary to maintain it over a period of time, but my approach is that from a policy perspective, we can unlock so many economic benefits through a phased out removal of the luxury tax on smart device. If as a country, holistically from the department's perspective in terms of our mandate to drive digital inclusion, to connect people to the internet, and also from a taxation perspective, if we find alignment on this, because, and I'm never one to critique revenue authorities, but I think if you think about it, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, the third process that went into the classification of smart devices, may have been relevant now, but in this day and time, based on the evolutions of technology, it requires a different look and a different approach to it.
Okay.
Because when that happens, which is the most important thing, when more and more people are able to afford smart devices, it will also help with the acceleration of getting people migrating from 2G and 3G devices into 4G and 5G devices, and that also means that there's an opportunity in terms of the use of that spectrum.
Minister, just maybe as we wrap up, we're looking at just moving you didn't mention the importance of digital inclusion, and digital transformation. How does your department move that needle forward?
Look, there's a series of interventions that's got to happen. One is the right policy environment, and a proactive policy environment that one is responsive to the times that we're in. And that is why one of the things that I was very clear about setting up when I took over was to establish, to host a policy colloquium, which we are hosting tomorrow, where we're bringing together the sector, say because we want to make the journey inclusive. there's very clear outline of what my ministerial priorities are in terms of driving digital inclusion, in terms of the focus on reducing the cost to communicate and making smart devices more affordable, in terms of a focus on building a capacity for digital skilling of both the public servants and also society in general, mostly young people, women, and people living with disabilities. But we want to make the journey inclusive, because as someone who has been in the sector for so long covering it, you would have come across sentiment at any different time about the need to modernize our policies to adapt to the environment and the times that we're in. So we're taking that first big step with the policy colloquium tomorrow, to have an industry-led conversation about where governments a focus should be in terms of policy interventions that can help with repositioning this ICT sector. Because, truth be told, this sector is the backbone of so many other sectors. And if we get digital transformation right, if we reposition our ICT policies in a manner that enables and encourages job creation in a manner that can spur economic growth, I think we would have achieved something monumental for this portfolio. It has the potential if we get a policy direction right.
Thank you for your time, Minister, and your insights on the department, what the department is up to, and how you found the role since taking leadership as the executive principal in that department. And thank you for your time,
No,
Minister.
absolutely. Thank you. I think my approach is we're always going to have to account. I think this department, and I recognize that it holds a very, very important mandate. And we have a responsibility to be transparent about every action that we are taking in the department, so that South Africans can see where we are trying to take this department and what we are trying to do.
Thank you, Minister. All the best with that.
Thank you.
That was the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Mr. Solly Malatsi. For more on these, click here.